welcome back to the Ask podcast, where we sincerely hope you'll be attaining some secret knowledge with us, our teachers and our staff at John Hampden Grammar School in High Wycombe. We're going a bit geographical today. Perhaps we'll be taking you to an exotic island, an awe-inspiring pyramid, or a verdant lagoon. We'll just have to wait and see. My name is Jenni Summers, Deputy Head of English and Drama at the school, and I can't wait to travel in real life, but for now I'm going to hope that we're going to use our imaginations today, and that'll have to keep me going. And here is my great colleague.
I am Mark Till. I am the Head of English at John Hampden Grammar School, and very much looking. We've got a marvellous guest and panel this week. Difficult third album. Two incredibly successful podcasts to start with. The third one, we hope it'll be equally successful. There will be a third clue for clue hunters, a third clue inserted at some point during today's podcast that might not be the start or the end. So you're going to have to go clue hunting today. We've had about 23 students have guessed, and there have been no correct guesses so far. The third clue might prove decisive, so listen out for the third clue.
Excellent stuff. Very teasing you're being today, sir. Right, and let's move on to our lovely panel. We've got two returning panellists and a new one today. Of course, we've got our production extraordinaire, Tom.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm the producer of the podcast. This is my second episode, so if you haven't heard the episode about witchcraft, you should be listening to that before you listen to this one. I study maths, physics, further maths, music, and I'm interested in all sorts of different things, so this is prime podcast for it.
That is an absolutely crazy selection of topics you've gone for there. With music and maths, the mind boggles at the idea, but brilliant. And another returning guest with us, Teo.
Hello. I mean, I don't really feel the need to introduce myself. I'm already expecting to be world famous after the first episode that I was on. But yeah, my name's Teo. I was on the first episode of the podcast. I study history, maths, chemistry and physics. Unfortunately, I dropped geography for A-level, but I do really love travelling, and obviously I have a passion for erosional landforms, which our guest today was brilliant enough to teach us at GCSE.
But not brilliant enough to convince you to do A-level.
Well,
it is. I think the special guest didn't, in fact, just dissuaded you from A-level.
I'm sure you were like me, Mum, and you were fighting your way to try and get Teo on board, and you didn't take English either, and I'm not bitter about that at all, as you can tell. And then we've got our new guest, Dan. Tell us about yourself, Dan.
Hello, my name's Daniel. I study geography, economics, chemistry and German at A-level, and I am a geographer, and I do a lot of geography research in my free time.
Hello, you've got to watch out for him, Mum.
Expert panellist.
And of course we've got our fantastic guest today, Mrs. Fiona Tremelling, an extraordinary woman of many talents, naval, legal, geographical, and she's here to show sorry, Sir's laughing at me, putting me off. How rude. But we want to know about why she has a passion for places, which is her topic of choice today. So tell us about that, Mom. What does that mean to you, that phrase, and why might you have decided to pick it?
Right, I have decided to pick a passion for places rather than travel, because I didn't want to just sit here and tell you about all the amazing places I've been to around the world. I think you'd get quite bored of hearing about it. So I picked places deliberately because I think that our knowledge about places is ever increasing. I did listen with interest to the first podcast when Mr. Sorden cruelly stole the topic I wanted to talk about, which was, of course, Antarctica, as Teo pointed out at the time, having been there myself for two occasions for 6 months at a time. And so I wanted to talk with passion about somewhere that I had been and I knew, but I thought, actually, let's go broader than that, because I feel some of the comments that were made during the podcast were slightly alarming when people said there was no longer a need to go to places because you could investigate them online and you could read about them in your books and things like that. And I thought, well, no, I think actually sometimes the lived experience of the place is the best way to get to know different places. And I think with lockdown having happened and we haven't been able to go anywhere, we've had to really use our mind and our powers of research, or even our memories, to think about places around the world. And last year's Young Geographer competition was all about the world beyond our window, because we're all sat in our bedrooms working. And I thought actually the best times and the worst times for me during lockdown were thinking about places I could have been in, and places I wanted to go to still, and places that I had been to. So that's why I chose this quite broad topic. Similarly, I didn't want to get Daniel ready to ask me questions by giving him any information in advance that he might be able to use against me during the course of the cross-questioning today. So that is why I picked quite a broad topic.
So what's the trend? Because obviously the pandemic has been quite a unique situation where people haven't been able to travel and maybe have valued it more. But in general, in modern society, do you think people have more of a passion for places than ever before? People seem to be travelling to lots of far-flung destinations in a way that's easier than it's ever been. Or have we lost some of the passion that we used to have, do you think?
Yeah, so I think with the advent of obviously easier access to places and easier travel, and the world sort of shrinking in terms of globalisation, some of those amazing things we study in geography, that people will choose to go to any destinations. It's easier, it's cheaper. But very often I would encourage people not to go to easier places, but to find other places. And sometimes the only way you can find out about other places sometimes is through the written text, or online research, or word of mouth. And so places isn't always necessarily about travelling straight away, but having a think about where you want to go and what you want to do and what you want to achieve when you're there. So if you just want to go and lie on a beach in the south of France, then that's very easy, it's accessible. But are you in the long term going to remember those memories in times, maybe in future times of lockdown, or are you actually going to remember places that you've been that have been slightly more challenging or unusual? And I'll give you an example of this. I can remember more about my travels to Antarctica. Yes, I was there for a long time because of specific things, and they're to do with our kind of senses and what we were feeling, rather than just being lazy and thinking, oh, I've had a wonderful time lying on the beach in the south of France, but what do I actually remember about it? Probably not that much. So I think, bearing in mind the time we have and the availability of options now, we can really make the most of travelling around our planet and finding places that we're actually going to get something from and take something away with us. So I guess, going back in time, why would I want to go to Antarctica? Why was that already in my mind? And that was because I'd had it from a lived experience of someone else. So I think places is about knowing what it's like from text, knowing what it's like from perhaps art or different sources, or the media's perception of a place. But it's also about lived experience. So my father was a geologist who went to Antarctica as part of one of the very early expeditions, not as early as Shackleton, obviously, I'm not that old, but he was inspired by Shackleton's story, and he went to Antarctica to do work there with the British Antarctic Survey. And he
Mr. Sorden properly stole your topic.
He really did steal my topic. But he came back with stories, and I remember being bored rigid as a child of being shown slideshow after slideshow about Antarctica, and I couldn't have thought of anything worse than going to somewhere where my dad had been, because I just felt like I already knew it. And listening to the podcast 2 podcasts ago, when Antarctica was being described as just a barren landscape in darkness or in light, it came across as very dull, and I thought, oh dear, no, that's not my lived experience of that particular place. So I would say, for me, Antarctica was a beautiful, stunning landscape, where the main kind of things I got from it was total silence. And it reminds me a little bit of this room. That's why I was asking earlier, why has this room got padding and certain bits? Antarctica's like that. It's probably the only place on the planet where it is completely quiet. It's almost like school before people come into school in the morning. It's quite acceptable, but there's still the M40 there, and that's why it's a noisy place, this. But Antarctica is quiet, it's beautiful, it's stunning, there's wildlife, you can get so close to the things that's there. So going up to penguins and them not being frightened of you, because they're so unused to people that they are inquisitive about us like we're inquisitive about them. And following kind of, when I went down there, following kind of Shackleton's pattern of walking on ice floes and walking on the continent, it is not just a flat, barren continent, it's a beautiful, magnificent, mountainous place with stunning scenery, and really wonderful to sort of just experience for yourself. And then I followed that trek then to Elephant Island. Again, an outstanding place. We were doing observations of elephant seal numbers, and we were looking at how populations had declined and increased. And I've got amazing photographs of me who I thought I was doing quite a cool pose next to one of these things, and then the next minute, the next photograph is me looking horrified and running away because it was coming to get me. So, and then going from there to Grytviken in South Georgia, And just, South Georgia, sort of, they're talking about this whaling community and all the rest of it in your last podcast. It's stunning. There is an awful lot of sea fog around the main bay where Grytviken is, and you can sort of enter this bay almost like a sort of, pirate ship in the kind of fog, and then the sun comes out, and it's just the most extraordinary experience. Even though there's elements of little bits of iron and sailing things and ex-whaling equipment rusting away, there you have this just fantastic scenery and countryside with so many ramifications. If we think about we're coming up to the anniversary of the Falklands War, and South Georgia was pivotal in that, and there's the sort of machinery and based things from that kind of era. So going there and then actually going to visit Shackleton's grave is quite extraordinary. His widow chose for him to be buried there. Well, what was his association with that place? It was his lived experience. So I really want people to enjoy places through a lived experience, not just what they've been told about it. So, those kind of aspects are why I'm particularly passionate and would encourage people to go to more challenging, not necessarily the holiday in Spain or the holiday elsewhere.
What would you say are your tips for people when they're going to more challenging places? Because obviously most people won't have a research aim or something that they're aiming to do scientifically when they go to these places, but they do want to explore. So do you have any tips of how you research the place before you go, or when you're there, how you research the culture?
So if you want, I would say there's two ways of doing this. A lot of people your age will go off and do a gap year, and so you can go and work for charity organisations. They are a fantastic way of just exploring places, because you get more of the real life. If you're doing some kind of charity project or volunteering project, you will get to experience maybe some of the difficulties in that particular place. It's all very well going to somewhere, I don't know, like the island of sort of Sumatra, and going to visit, sort of either Indonesia or Malaysia, and just enjoying that kind of idyllic holiday experience. There are some real problems in Indonesia and Malaysia, particularly with deforestation and things. So do you want to see just one part of it, or do you want the reality of the place? And I think that's why doing something through a charity or organisation is a good way. The other way is perhaps don't go with any preconceptions. Don't do any research about a place. And when you get there, talk to the locals. Find out what this place is like. I think for me, one of my best experiences, I went to Lima in Peru, and sort of I knew I was going to go and do the Machu Picchu trail, the Inca Trail and Machu Picchu. But for me, just going exploring Lima. So there's one side of Lima that's the nice hotels, and then there's the Lima with the kind of shanty towns and the kind of squalor aspect to it. So what did I do? I made sure I saw both sides of it. I got someone to take me to a local salsa club, because I had never salsa danced in my life, and it was out of my comfort zone. I've got two left feet and clearly was not going to enjoy it, but it was outstanding, and so I think just seeing something from a different perspective is another sort of key way of doing things. When I think, I've been recently doing a lot of revision at home with one of my children who's doing GCSEs, so this is when English comes into it. So Robert Louis Stevenson, and looking at Jekyll and Hyde and that kind of thing, is revision. But he also wrote Treasure Island, and he, what was the basis for that? What was his inspiration behind that? Some people say it's his island in Scotland, some people say it's further afield. His ship is called the Hispaniola. Is he therefore relating to Haiti and the Dominican Republic? So you get the option to go to the Caribbean. Are you going to go to the Dominican Republic on one side, or Haiti on the other? And all travel companies go to the Dominican Republic. Nobody goes to Haiti. Why is that? I would want to know why. So I want to go. I mean, I have never been to Haiti. Daniel will get this next year when we look at hazards. We will study Haiti from what the exam board want you to study. But actually, we, is looking at places. I've never been, I want to go. What do I want to get out of looking at Haiti, apart from the fact there was an earthquake there and there were some vulnerable people there? There's more to it than that. There's a historical element to it. There's fun sides to it as well. So it's interesting. On one little island has so many resonances with lots of different things that I think go with a preconception or don't. But when you're there, make sure you answer your own questions, wherever they are.
How does the self-marketing of places affect what the place is actually like, or the perception you get when you're there?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting one. So there's lots of adverts, isn't there, on television where it's come to California, we're not all surfing all day or whatever it is.
We also do wine tasting.
Yeah. Is it like that? And I think, yes, I would say a lot of tourists get sold on a particular perception, and when you go, it's very different. And California is a really good example. So I was fortunate to live out there for a couple of years and have my children at school there and do a bit of work there. And it's a fascinating place because we all probably perceive California to be bright sunshine and wealthy and expensive. A lot of it is actually very poorly constructed buildings that burn down in wildfires, and it's not expensive, it's not luxurious, it's probably not what you are expecting at all. So in terms of perceptions of places, what they're perceived to be, it could be a media portrayal, it could be how they're self-advertising. So I think it's an interesting one. I never trust anything I'm told in an advert. I don't trust anything that I'm getting from any form of social media either.
Just on that, before Tom comes in, is this basically an anti-tourism point you're making?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Do you think a lot of tourism is superficial though?
Because I think the tourist industry is so important in a number of countries and a number of places for them to survive.
Yeah.
So some very poor countries like the Philippines, for example, relies heavily on tourism. Jamaica has become quite a wealthy place because of tourism. Tunisia, for example, a lot of places rely heavily on tourism. And we kind of, I think, if we're looking at a view of the world, do we owe them to go on holiday there? And I think in some ways we do, because we're providing a lot of money. And this is definitely not anti-tourism. I think it's a great strategy to reduce the development gap. But I think in the round, if you are going to find your own lived experiences, don't perceive yourself as a tourist. Perceive yourself as someone doing an investigation or an inquiry or finding out about something. Because I think you will take far more away from it than just going on holiday as a tourist.
Do you think, though, in the modern day, especially with the World Health Organization sort of bringing in burnout into human disease, do you think there is place for a relaxing holiday where you just escape what's going on in the real world? Do you think there's still place for that?
Did I sit there during lockdown when I was trying to entertain 30 year 9s on Google Meet? And did I think, I wish I was by the beach? Yeah, I think there's absolutely, and I think that's another bit of place, is the total escapism you can get from certain places. And we all need that, don't we? But I don't, with escapism and relaxation and dealing with stress, because obviously it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week, is enjoy any space or any place. So a place doesn't have to be a country or a destination. It could be a building or a piece of farmland or a wood. A place can be, a special place is where you have somewhere that you can relax and get away from the stress and strains of your everyday. So if you saw Miss Burrow's presentation this week, it's all about going outside. Outside is a great place to relax, but there are other inside places that are just as interesting. So I know you wanted me to talk a little bit about law and things like that, I suppose. Yes, so there are certain places that resonate with me when I was relaxed and confident and happy and thinking I was doing a good job. Same with you guys when you come to revise and things. There'll be places where you're feeling able to do the best possible for yourself that you can. And I was thinking about where is that kind of place for me. So I used to do a lot of prosecuting and defending at Peterborough Crown Court. It's a very bog standard 80s building. It doesn't look very nice. Peterborough itself, unless you come from there, is a very underwhelming city in my personal opinion. It's one of the sort of, I won't say the phrase is used, but it's one of the 10 worst towns in the UK. I won't say what the proper book is called.
Goodbye, Peterborough listeners. It's lovely having you for 2 episodes. You probably haven't got to the end of the first.
But the building is non-remarkable. There's a beautiful cathedral, I have to say, in Peterborough. That's well worth a visit, and it's just lovely. But the Crown Court is not. But within the Crown Court, there are 2 very different spaces that make up this element of place. There is Court 1, which is a massive courtroom where they do very serious offences, and I've prosecuted an attempted murder there. I have prosecuted an attempted kidnapping and some quite serious assault cases. And it's a very impersonable space. It's somewhere where you wouldn't expect to be able to do well in that space. Next door is Court 2, which is a far more intimate courtroom, different sorts of cases there, which you would expect to feel more confident in. And out of the 2 places, in that particular building, in that one town or one city in the UK, I would go for court 1 every time. And when I think why it is, it's not winning cases or losing cases, it was the people in the room. So particularly his son George Coleman, who used to sit in courtroom 1, was someone who made you as an advocate do well.
So you're talking a lot about the people in the places, and I was just wondering, do you think people make places what they are? Do you think people are really important? Because obviously in a holiday you get a mix of sort of urban areas, you might go to a sort of secluded beach once in a while, so you do get that mix. But for you, what's more important, the people in a place or the natural place itself?
Ooh, tricky.
Oh, tricky. There's 2 answers to this, I think. So I'm going to give you the option. You decide which one's right, Dan. Okay. So I think for me, the place is something to do with the physical nature of it. So however it's been formed or created, or how the land is shaped, or what processes have been involved. So in that way, you could say that place is very much about the natural environment, but we've obviously taken over a lot of natural places and made them man-made places. So are the two intrinsically linked? I think yes is the answer, because by the very virtue of you going to that place, even if it's a non-urbanised, completely remote place, you are making it a human place.
Mm.
So in terms of things like somewhere completely remote like Antarctica, are we having an impact? Is that a human place or is that a natural place? Mm. And I think by the very nature of us being there, it becomes a human place. But in terms of, are you saying what's it like, or how it changes your view on it, or
I suppose because like you've got to wonder, why are you going there? Like for you, do you think visiting a place is about the history of the place, or do you think the more we make places human places, the worse they get in terms of sometimes we might spoil the natural environment? So I suppose it's wondering, do we want our world to be a world where we can visit because of historical stuff, or do we want to visit places just because of their natural beauty, or do we want a mixture of the two?
I think it depends on your personality and what you want to get out of the place. So you're a historian, so you would probably, wherever you go, without realising it, unconsciously look for the historical side of it. As a geographer and as growing up, my passion for geography and places grew because everywhere I went, I wanted to know the whys and the wherefores. Why is it like this? Why is that over there? Why am I smelling these smells? Why am I feeling these feelings? Because it's to do with the kind of the geography of the place, the human and the physical geography. So I don't think there's a set answer for that. I think we are changing places. Are we spoiling places? Yes, definitely. You can see that on any documentary on TV at the moment about climate change and what we're doing with plastic in the oceans. But are we also making some places better? And I think the answer is possibly yes as well. So for somewhere like Haiti, or a multi-hazard environment where you've got a poorer community of people, are we able to improve their place? Yes, we are. So I think people can do both, can do good and bad things to their places.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I think I agree with you in terms of that. You come to a place most likely for the climate or for the characteristics it has. Of course, there's exceptions to this rule. For example, London. I mean, I don't think anyone comes here for the weather. But I think that generally you would go somewhere on holiday to experience what the physical geography is like. So if you want to go to the beach for the ocean and, you know, the nice warm temperatures, or if you want to go to the mountains and explore, you know, the trails and see the amazing views, you go there for physical geography, I would say. However, I think you also stay there because of the people. I think to a certain degree, of course there's exceptions again, but I think you go to a place and then you fall in love with the different cultures and whatever, you know, the kind of customs they have there.
I suppose it's interesting that the places also shape the people, you could argue.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that is one of the things, that you go there and you get shaped by whatever your experience of that place is. And it can be positive or it could be negative. So I think that, I know you've got a real passion for some areas that you studied sort of in Africa.
Yep.
And I think what have I experienced of the whole continent of Africa? Probably, a tiny amount of it. So very north of Africa and the very south of Africa. I had my hen do at the top of Table Mountain in Cape Town. And we're talking about why to go to places. Can I just put this in context? I'm not someone who is ridiculously rich, who has been around the world on a one-woman mission. I went because I was told to go there as part of my job. So when I was in the Navy, going to all these places was paid for, and I was paid to be there. But then what you experience, however you get to these places, whatever you experience is what you decide to experience there. And I think in terms of passionate about places and human versus physical, my favourite place that I am ever is on the ocean, on open water, where perhaps I don't even see land. I love it. So we were in the Pacific once, beautiful day. There were lots of sort of diving birds whose name has escaped me, the pelicans, that's it, the pelicans sort of sweeping into the water. And it could be perceived by some people that the ocean is quite a dangerous place and fills you with fear, this deep, deep water. But just jumping in and just being there in the middle of nowhere is quite an extraordinary experience. So I think there's an element of both to answer that kind of question.
I've just been reading Life of Pi with my year 8, and I have to say, one of my favourite books. But that makes me absolutely terrified of the open ocean, I have to say, and possibly had the opposite effect of that. But I appreciate your descriptions, Mum. It does seem really, really inviting. I was just thinking, maybe we could ask the gentleman about, do you have aspirations of, Mum said to us, tricky and challenging places. Do you have dreams of places that you think, that is my dream location, my dream place?
Or just a holiday, kind of just because I'm not saying don't go on holiday. So, Tom, where do you want to go?
Well, I unfortunately, I'm a little bit conservative with, I want to go on holiday, but I do want to go to Antarctica. I'd really like to go to the poles. I mean, it's the thing you said with open ocean. I find that with the concept of submarines, like if I was to join the armed forces, I'd join the submarine part of the Navy. I think the whole polar submarine expeditions, there's just something so cool about that. I'd love to go to
pun intended.
To the exactly. Well, to the Arctic and to the Antarctic. Like you have, I think that's really cool.
That sounds the opposite of conservative. That sounds like my idea of the most terrifying thing I can imagine.
Never want to go in a submarine. I've stood in one and I never want to go underwater in this thing. It's awful.
Agreed.
Terry, where's your plan?
I mean, I think the place, I have never been to South America, and the place in the world that I probably most want to go to is there, because I just think it's a very long continent, so it covers so many of the different climates. It's such an interesting and varied place, and obviously there's sort of richer areas and poorer areas, and I'm one personally, as you were saying, for sort of discovering the light and the shade in different places and getting an idea of the reality for the people there. So I think if I had the choice, I would definitely probably go to South America.
So I just want, before Danny asks, I want to cut in here and say this is one of my negative experiences that I've taken away, and I will never forget this: blatant sexism in the Patagonian Canal.
Oh dear.
Because I was driving our ship through the Patagonia, we had to meet the pilot. The pilot came on board and refused to navigate us or pilot us through the Patagonian Canal because a woman was driving the ship. Oh, no. So, and I remember that. I'd never really had that by way of sexist sort of behaviour before, but that's stuck with me that day. And being relieved of duty on that day because the captain had no choice, and it was just horrendous. Sorry, that's a negative experience. Carry on.
No, before I answer the question, that's interesting. I think actually stuff such as gender issues, equality issues, I think that's we've improved so much on that in the past 25 to 50 years even, just because we've had so much mixing of different cultures that we've managed to kind of, I wouldn't say pick the best of everything as such, as there's still a lot of flaws in our system, but I think we kind of hold each other more accountable. And in the same way where it might be custom in one country to have sexism and that kind of be okay there, I think we, with our perspective, come in and we can actually, teach them that, so we can improve our world through travel. To answer the question about what place would I want to go to, I think Tara made a good point about South America with the different climates. However, I think this is, I have a biased opinion because I used to live there, but Africa to me is the complete continent. I think it's first of all, it's got all the climates as well, from even mountains to deserts to the Sahel and like savanna biomes to even tropical rainforests. I think it has such a diverse just feel to it, and I think even the people, the different cultures you have there, it's like nowhere else on the world. I think that's, again, I think personally I'm more of a people person, so I go to a place, even though I do appreciate the physical geography, but I also think the people are extremely important. So personally that's kind of where I would want to be and even live. But I do agree with Teo that South America is also...
There's just too many places to go to.
Yeah,
So
strange.
maybe not keep going
It's
back
true.
to the south of France. And, maybe
Lovely there it is.
I have been to Peru, Mum, and I've also done the salsa, the Machu Picchu, and so on.
If it's only, every summer I went. My childhood was just to go to Cornwall. We would go. My father's Cornish. I married a Cornishman, and we would do Polzeath in that area every summer. And was every summer different? It was, and it was extraordinary. And that was the happiest times I reflect on of growing up, was just doing that very basic campsite in Polzeath. There are other campsites available, and it's incredible. So, and it's the people, and it's everything tied together.
And it's linked to growing up, and it's linked to your family. A lot of people.
Yeah.
So I did this with my form earlier, and we talked about places that were special to them, and so many of them was linked to family holidays. Because actually, yes, it was the place, but it was also how old they were,
Yes.
and the things they were learning at the time, and it was their family, and it was the whole experience of being together, I suppose. I can't get over your ship, by the way. I would have mutinied. I think the entire ship should have mutinied and refused to go anywhere.
I was in the minority, so there's only 3 of us, so William knows. Yeah, I think places are extraordinary, and I'm really grateful you've let me come in and just... I seem like I've done a lot of talking, but I am so excited by the idea of places and just enjoying, and literally it could be a place round the corner, it could be the woods, around, with a bluebell at this time of year. It could be any place. And I do think it's really important to get out and just explore local, far, near, wherever you like, but hopefully you've maybe been inspired to go somewhere else.
I just wanted to ask just quickly, just to round off the conversation, because you've talked about so many places. Do you have a favourite one, or are you going to keep that a secret?
So I would say out in the ocean with nothing else, or just round the corner in our local woods where I take my dog.
That's nice.
Mrs. Summers, your favourite place? Have we heard yours?
Germany? We haven't
Germany's
even
lovely.
talked at all about Germany, but since I've been with my husband for a million years, it feels like, don't tell him I said that, I hope he's not listening. But yeah, we've been back several times. I don't know what it is about this, such an incredible mixture of culture. I love the food, I love a beer, it has to be said. And it's just so many different experiences, like depending on where you are in the country. I love Berlin, I love Munich, I love Nuremberg, we've been all over the place, Cologne and so on. And it's just one of those places that you just can't exhaust. There's just so much and obviously the history is incredible, and people are so reflective and humble about it. And it's just and it's so out in the open. And it's a really refreshing approach, I think. So yeah, that's probably my favourite. Even though Peru was also pretty amazing. So I'm certainly feeling challenged, Mark. I feel like, currently I'm theoretically either going to north of France this year, because that's as far as I can really get, or I might be going to Salcombe. So maybe you might prefer me to go over to Salcombe. but in the future, certainly I would like to take my my baby Jessica to far-flung places, just as you suggest, and take her on adventures just like you had when you were younger. So thank you to everyone today. It has been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. Completely different feel to some of our other podcasts, but yet really felt like I've learned a lot about everybody, and I've really thought about this in a way I might not have before. Thank you to Tom and Teo and Dan for our fantastic panellists. Thank you to Mum for being such a fantastic guest and really opening our minds to these new things. And thank you to our lovely production team. And thank you, Sarah, I guess. I better thank you,
Absolutely.
sir.
I didn't do the clue. I was going to drop it in subtly. It was such a fascinating discussion.
Yeah,
I didn't
we
do
got
it.
lost.
Voltaire.
Look for it.
We could. Yeah, I was thinking that. Voltaire.
And can I just say, I have not figured out the answer yet. So if you
I
have
was going
figured
to
out-
suggest Bronte.
Yeah.
but,
Third clue.
Not.
Third clue. Mum thought she could make up her own clues.
Yes, I was very excited.
Voltaire's your third.
Okay, all right, I'll
you.
keep going. I'll keep trying and Hopefully you guys will get it before me. Brilliant. As usual, can I encourage you to subscribe to YouTube, to Spotify? We should now hopefully be on Apple and all sorts of different things. So look for us there. Search for Jenni with an I. I forgot to say that previously. I spelled my name with an I just to be awkward. Jenni Summers. And then you'll find that. Follow us at JHGS English and JHGS Geog. I think I'm right there. I don't know if you've updated that Twitter in a long time.
I don't think Mr. Reed and I are ready for it.
You don't want any feedback?
No.
All right, okay.
I'll keep you posted.
A passion for places, but not Twitter.
Interesting. That is a discussion which will continue another day, I'm absolutely sure. Yeah, so it just only remains, if Sir has nothing else to add, to say goodbye. Thank you very much for listening and see you very soon.
Yeah, what a marvellous episode. Mrs. Tremelling has to come back, I think.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Slightly nervous about it.
Thank you.